Hey, this is Josh,
This is Zeke.
and today we're going to talk about what we want from Nintendo's E3 this year,
That takes place on Tuesday, doesn't it?
which is tomorrow.
That's fair.
And it's at like 9 a.m. or 12 p.m., depending on your time zone.
I don't know, I'm gonna watch it later anyway.
I think it's 11 a.m. where we're at.
Ah,
So, you can sleep in and still watch it. It'll be fine.
awesome.
So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of different franchises we want to see and what we want to see from those franchises. I'm going to pitch something, and then Zeke is going to tell me what he thinks of that, and we're going to have a little conversation about it.
Sounds good to me. Let's get started.
Okay, Zeke, to open up the presentation, Nintendo is going to have their little logo, the Switch goes click, and then the screen goes black. A little bit of white text pops up to the bottom, not actual gameplay footage. You know what that means.
Yeah.
It's time for Smash Ultimate Fighter Pass number 11. And my pick is Crash Bandicoot. Now, I know you disagree, but let me finish. My pick is Crash, and afterwards, Sakurai's going to pop up and announce that this will be the only fighter revealed at E3 this year, and he's going to have a Sakurai Presents for Crash this September. Now, why don't you want Crash?
I just don't care for him. I believe that Master Chief deserves it more. And I know Nintendo fans probably dislike that, but he's had a bigger impact on gaming as a whole. Crash has impacted the platformer scene, the part of gaming that Mario is the chief of, but Master Chief changed the gaming industry. Halo was a unique game that has garnered support from thousands upon hundreds of thousands upon millions of people. And I just don't like Crash. He's not a lot of fun for me. The games are frustrating, and his moveset, if it's based entirely on the games, would feel kind of bland to me. It would feel like he fit more in Smash 64 with their limited movesets. Now, I understand that Master Chief probably wouldn't happen because Microsoft has already gotten two characters, essentially. Because of that, based on moveset, I think Spyro would be a more unique character choice based on moveset and moveset alone, since we don't have too many quadrupeds in Smash.
Okay, I hear you. But let me pitch you this. We get Crash at E3, like I want, and then this year at the Game Awards, where the new Halo is almost certainly going to be nominated, we get Master Chief.
Well, new Halo has to release first.
Assuming that game actually comes out when it's supposed to, I'd bet money that it's going to be nominated for a Game Award. As long as it's what they expect it to be. If it comes out and it's the next Cyberpunk, we might be in a spot of trouble with Master Chief.
That's fair.
Alright, let's move on. Okay, so the rest of the show, I'm going to have Miyamoto hosting. He's going to introduce either a person or a brand or a company to come talk about their next game. And first up, he introduces Aonuma, who's going to give us a brand new trailer for Legend of Zelda, the sequel to Breath of the Wild. It's going to give us the title of the game, gameplay, and a release date of December 2021. Now I know that is not going to happen. It's a spring 2022 game, but this is my dream E3, so let me dream.
I would agree. I really want Breath of the Wild 2. Breath of the Wild 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. It combines the open world nature of Skyrim with the quality of a Nintendo game. Now, what I would want, I want combat. I want a great combat system. Much more dynamic than what we've already got. I want harder enemies. I love fighting Lynels. I even liked a lot of the boss fights, but fighting bokoblins in the middle of nowhere just wasn't any fun. So giving me more variety, more weapons to deal with, a better AI system, and just more enemies in general. And I think it's obvious that they're gonna say something about Breath of the Wild 2. If they don't, they're skipping over one of their biggest franchises. That would be like Microsoft skipping over Halo. So if we don't see something about Breath of the Wild 2 from Nintendo, they're really slacking.
And the sequel to Breath of the Wild is not going to be the only thing they talk about at E3 this year. They're obviously going to address Skyward Sword, and I think we're going to get a short little teaser. Nothing major. They're going to show off that amiibo that they have, and then they're going to play it in the treehouse later.
I want to see more about the button controls. I know they told us they exist, but knowing exactly how they're doing it, if they're following the old standard button controls, if they're mapping them to the Pro Controller, or whatever. And I want to see how they make the Joy-Cons work with the old motion controls as an option.
That's why I think they're going to play Skyward Sword in the treehouse. They have a 3-hour treehouse slot after E3 this year. But in addition to the trailer for Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, I believe that Aonuma is going to announce a Zelda 35th Anniversary Direct for next week. And in this Direct, we're going to get the final trailer for Skyward Sword. It reveals brand new content being added to the game, which includes a new dungeon, new equipment for that dungeon, new enemies for that dungeon, and a couple more little things that I'm not creative enough to think up right now. I'm not a developer. In addition to that, they're going to tease us for a new Zelda 2D game for 2022. They're also going to reveal the Zelda Master Collection, which is Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask in HD, remastered, and the Legend of Zelda Dolphin Collection, which is obviously not the final name, but it's Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which were on the GameCube, which was the Dolphin. Anyways, it's the HD versions from Wii U.
Now, I want to comment specifically on the Master Collection, though. This is kind of the whole second part of this pitch in general, everything after Skyward Sword. It'd be very interesting. I'd love to see it. Having the option to play things such as Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on the Switch would be great. However, they just re-released them for the 3DS. Because of that, I doubt it's going to happen.
That's fair.
Nintendo, honestly, they'd never give it to us. They already re-released Ocarina of Time once. This isn't a Pokemon situation. I think we're done with it for the next 5-10 years.
Alright, now let's move on. Next up, we get the developers who announced that Metroid Prime 4 would be delayed a couple years ago back on the screen. And they're happy to announce that development is coming along nicely, and that the game is slated for release in spring 2023. Yeah, that's a bummer. But they do have some good news in the meantime.
They need something on Metroid Prime 4. Anything. I don't know what. Just something to tell us that this game exists. It hasn't been canceled. It's not the next Duke Nukem. Okay? They, meaning Metroid fans, deserve to know that they're not waiting until 2030 for a random Switch game. Okay? That's all I ask. I'm not even a huge Metroid fan, and I want to see the trailer.
Okay, so that good news that they have for us. Metroid Prime Trilogy HD is coming to Nintendo Switch in 2022, in January, with options for both the traditional button controls from Metroid Prime 1 and 2, and the IR motion controls from Trilogy. But you can choose between the two for all 3 games. And then they're going to hand over the reins to Mercury Steam for a special announcement.
I have to comment here again. This is Nintendo we're talking about. Nintendo is not really focused on giving the fans what they want. I think we can agree on that. They're more focused on what's going to bring in top dollar. And Metroid, while they seem to be letting the series exist, unlike something like F-Zero, I don't think they're going to be releasing anything for it because traditionally it's a lower grossing game. Because of that, I wouldn't get my hopes up, even though this would be cool to see.
Fair enough. Mercury Steam, I think, should announce that Metroid Samus Returns is being ported to Switch with a release date of November 2021. Now, this does put it in competition with Pokemon this year, but, like Zeke just said, Nintendo never really gives Metroid a chance to shine, so I can see them doing this, putting it right there with Pokemon and not giving it room to breathe, which would guarantee lower sales and just prove further to Nintendo that they don't need to focus on Metroid, which is not what we want, but I could see it happening.
And I have to say, I don't really like this idea. I haven't strongly disagreed with anything so far, but I don't like ports. I don't think this is a bad game, but I would prefer to avoid ports where possible. Something like Skyward Sword, where it hasn't been available since the Wii, I understand, but this game was on the 3DS, and I'm kind of tired of failed games getting ports. Now, I know this game particularly wasn't necessarily a failure in its own right as a Metroid game, but in general, it didn't do all too well.
I can see that argument. So, as a follow-up, I pitch that Metroid Dread also gets a teaser and a release window of summer 2022.
That's normal 2D Metroid, right?
Yeah, that would be Metroid 5.
I would like that. I'd much prefer that over getting a port of a 3DS game to the Switch.
Alright, let's talk about Pokemon now. For Pokemon, I want a new trailer for Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. 2 minutes long, and it's going to tease Giratina and showcase the return of Mega Evolution, with Cynthia Mega evolving her Garchomp. And then Dawn is going to raise her Mega Bracelet, and her Empoleon is going to be encased in the purple Mega Ball. But then the trailer cuts before showing the new Mega form.
I very much appreciate the Mega Pokemon being Garchomp. Lucario has gotten all of the Mega love since Megas came out. He's a great Mega, don't get me wrong, but Garchomp is Cynthia's ace, and it deserves it much more than Lucario does. But knowing Nintendo, they would probably choose Lucario for that role, just because it's so iconic as a Mega Pokemon. But I really want Mega Evolution back. Mega Evolution is one of my favorite quote-unquote gimmicks in all of Pokemon. It's better than Z-moves, and it's better than G-Max and Dynamax. So give me Mega Evolution back.
Next up, I want a short teaser for Legends Arceus. 30 seconds long. No new info, but the frame rates look better and everything looks more polished. It's just here to assuage people's fears, let them know that development is not as far behind as that first trailer we got looked like it was. Like, it's going to be ready next January, I think is when it's slated.
I definitely agree with the short trailer, but that being said, I want secret info. Not leaks, I'm not a huge leak fan, but little stuff in the trailer that points to different things that we want. Little hint in the background. Like, maybe we see Arceus in the background, or Giratina in the background. We have a certain NPC being talked to that may give us a hint. Little stuff like that. That's what I want to see from Pokemon this year. I really think they need to be very careful with Legends Arceus. It can very well be the next big step in the Pokemon franchise. It could break us away from the normal game after game after game formula that we have had since Red and Blue, or it could be a total commercial failure and we never get anything different from Sun and Moon, Red and Blue, Sword and Shield.
Next up, we're going to talk about a couple of ports and a couple of new games coming from forgotten franchises. I want 2 main ports, one from the 3DS and one from the Wii U. I want Kid Icarus Uprising from the 3DS to be ported to the Switch, and I want Star Fox Zero ported to the Switch from the Wii U. And, as a bonus in Star Fox Zero, I want Star Fox 64 in its entirety to be playable.
Okay. Let's start with what I like, because I have quite a bit to talk about here. I like that you would make Star Fox 64 playable in Star Fox Zero. Star Fox 64 is one of my favorite games to just pick up and play out of nowhere. I think it's becoming more and more obvious. I quite like the 64. But let's take a moment and talk about ports. I don't want any more. We touched on this briefly before, but let me actually lay out a logical argument. The first year of the Switch, we got Legend of Zelda, which is a cross-platform port, depends on who you ask. We got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is a straight port from the Wii U, and we got Pokken DX, which is a straight port from the Wii U. Okay, whatever. 3 games, that's fine. Then next year we got Bayonetta 2, We got Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. We got Captain Toad. And we got Hyrule Warriors ported to the Switch. Recently, we've gotten New Super Mario Bros. U, Pikmin 3, and Mario 3D World. That's just too much. I don't have an issue with bringing old games to new systems. I love it when they remaster a game, when they remake a game, like what they did with Link's Awakening, or what they've been doing with the Zelda franchise, where they remake the games in a higher quality on a console that more people have. But Star Fox 64, it's a great game, but Star Fox Zero doesn't really fit that. If Star Fox Zero was ported, it would be because it's a failed game. And it was a failed game for more reasons than just being on the Wii U. It was plagued with gameplay issues. Its control method was horrible, which I know they would fix that, but that's still notable. It doesn't have a good name. Kid Icarus Uprising, they would have to basically remake the game to make it work on the Switch. It would be a ground-up remake, not a port. And I would just prefer a new Kid Icarus game. Same with Star Fox. I love the Star Fox series, and I want a good follow-up to the traditional Star Fox formula. Star Fox Zero doesn't fit that. I'd just like a new game.
Okay, you're going to love my next two ideas then. Number one is a tease for a new Star Fox game coming in 2022. All we get is a CG trailer of Fox putting on his boots, and he hops in the R-Wing and takes off into space. And the sequel to Star Fox Zero is in development, pops up on screen.
That's exactly what I want. I want a new game. Now, all Star Fox games generally have the same story. We need to, Star Fox, save us from Andros. And then you play through the game. That's it. But revolutionizing the series in some way. Bringing it up to modern controls. We didn't have that. Star Fox 64 was the last good Star Fox game. Debatably.
It's the last good traditional Star Fox game. Adventures and Assault are good in their own right, from what I hear, and I cannot wait to play them for the channel later this year.
Right. Traditional Star Fox. It was so good that they re-released it on the 3DS. Then we got Star Fox Zero, which looked promising, but they relied too much on the gimmicky controller. And I just want a new Star Fox game built off of the Pro Controller, not the Joy-Cons, the Pro Controller, that we can enjoy.
And last, but not least, Wario Land 6 is going to be revealed with a release date of December this year.
I've never played Wario Land, but I'm down. Sounds good.
I only like the Wario Land series because the completionist had a really great video on one of the Wario Land games, and he convinced me that it's a series worth continuing, so that's where that comes from. Alright, next we're going to talk about a couple special appearances. Miyamoto pops back up to introduce his friends at Square Enix to announce a new collaboration. Super Mario RPG 2 is coming in early 2022. Only a CG trailer is shown, revealing Mario, Luigi, and Gino as playable characters facing off against a mysterious shadowy threat.
I doubt it. If it happens, that's great, and that's awesome, but I doubt it. Nintendo's never going to give us a Mario RPG follow-up other than Paper Mario.
See, I think Paper Mario is not an RPG, and it's not supposed to be, ever since the original. I think they've been moving it away from the RPG slot so they could put something else in there. They had Mario and Luigi on the DS, but that series is long gone at this point. And unless they want to bring that back, which would be really cool, just bring back Mario and Luigi and throw Gino in there, that works for me. But I think they need a Mario RPG. I think that's something that's missing here.
Like I said, I'm down for it, but I doubt Nintendo will ever do it.
Next, Miyamoto introduces the Kirby developers, and they say that they're excited to share the next stage in Kirby's adventuring life, which is a 3D Kirby game.
This is the clear next step in the Kirby franchise. We've had teases at a 3D platformer Kirby since the 64, where the entire game was made in the 3D plane and you just played as if it were 2D. I just want a confirmation that this is happening, but they have to be very careful with it. Kirby is a very easy game. It's a very easy series. That can be difficult to translate over into a 3D platformer sometimes. You get stuck, you get confused, you can't find the next place to go. So if they're going to make a Kirby 3D platformer, they have to put a lot of work into it to make sure it works as both a 3D platformer and a Kirby game.
You know, I'd be okay with that game being delayed if they waited for Smash Ultimate to be finished and brought Sakurai back on board to direct it.
Sure. Kirby's his kid. Let him do it.
Alright, finally from the Nintendo developers, before we switch over to some third-party guests, Nintendo EPD, which is the Mario Odyssey developers. They're going to reveal that they've been working on a new DK project that's been rumored for about a month now. It's actually 2 projects. The first is Donkey Kong Country Trilogy Remake. This is a brand new HD remake from the ground up in the style of Link's Awakening, in the style of Samus Returns. It's not a HD port, it's an HD remake. And it's coming to Switch in winter 2021, this year. They've been working on it in secret.
These games deserve a modern remake. They haven't been on a system as a game, not an emulation, since the SNES. Now, I know there were downgraded versions of them on some handhelds, but the original 3 Donkey Kong countries haven't been in their prime since the SNES. They're important to gaming. They made a fair impact on the platformer world. They changed the game a little bit, not as much as something like Mario, but they certainly had their place. And having the option to play them on the Switch or on whatever else Nintendo comes up with would be great, especially since SNES games are starting to get outdated. No offense to SNES lovers, but the lack of a buffer system is really outdated.
Alright, and their second project, EPD, also teases Donkey Kong Country 6, with the CG trailer featuring clips from the first 5 games, followed by a tag of DK beating his chest on a mountaintop or something. I don't know. Just something to tell us that they're working on the next game in the series.
Give me a 3D platformer. Give me a collectathon. I'll be happy. I love Banjo-Kazooie. I love Mario 64. What are some of the modern collectathons?
You got Ukulele, you got Hat in Time.
All
You've not
those.
played those.
I haven't played those, and I'm excited to play DK64. All of these are great games, and DK deserves to go back into 3D.
I agree. I don't think that's what EPD is working on, just because of the current rumors, but
Right.
I agree that he needs to get back to 3D sometime soon. Alright, let's transition to third party. The final part of Nintendo's E3 this year should be a slew of third-party games shown off in a sizzle reel. Things like Street Fighter V, which is currently exclusive to PC and PlayStation 4, or something like Persona 5, or something I want is Spyro 4, coming to Switch first in late 2021.
Give me Persona 5 Royal. I want to play that game. I don't own a PlayStation, so I can't. So just do it. It's not that hard. There's already a great relationship between Sony and the Persona 5 people and Nintendo. So just come on. It's not that technologically demanding.
Alright, last up, Miyamoto appears, and he says, we have just one more thing. And then he introduces Phil Spencer of Xbox. Now, first, Phil announces that he's happy to share 2 new games coming to Switch this year, and the screen goes black for a trailer. First up are clips of Banjo-Kazooie, Conker, Banjo-Tooie, Jetpack Gemini, and several other Rare games, and it becomes increasingly clear that this is a trailer for Rare Replay. And it is. Rare Replay is coming to Switch in 2021. And second, after it gets a release date, not of just 2021, but of today, Tuesday, the day of E3, via the eShop, the screen goes dark again. And then music that is unmistakably Grant Kirkhope begins to play in the background. The bear and the bird pop up on the black screen, but they're in their nuts and bolts renders, and everybody's kind of confused for a minute, but they look at the screen, they know, they're self-aware, They shake it off like a dog shaking off, and they laugh. And then they're restored to something resembling their Smash renders. Classic but modern. They jump off the black screen and land in Spiral Mountain, and we cut to gameplay for about 2 minutes. The trailer ends with a title reveal of Banjo 3E, releasing in late 2022 for Switch and Xbox Series X.
This would be awesome. I love the Banjo games, and I want to play them on modern consoles, but Nintendo would never do this. Of course, Rare Replay is a thing, and you can get it on the Xbox, but having it on a Nintendo console would be great, especially on the Switch, on the go. It's, well, powerful enough. I'm pretty sure the phones that we carry around in our pockets are powerful enough to run 64 games. So if they don't do this, it's not because of a technical limitation.
Especially after 3D All-Stars, we have a 64 emulator on the Switch. We know that they can run Nintendo 64 games. And we know they can run SNES and NES games because of online.
Right. So, if they don't do this, it's because their relationship with Microsoft somehow fell through in the last 6 months. I feel like we would have heard about that. Or maybe they just don't want to do it because they don't think it'll make them any money. Like I said, I want this. I would love this. I love Banjo-Kazooie.
That's our thoughts on E3 2021 for Nintendo, what we want to see, what we think we're going to see, things like that.
Make sure to tune in tomorrow to our channel to see some Crash Bandicoot, some Smash Online doubles, and also tune in for E3. I'm Zeke.
I'm Josh.
Signing off.